Welcome to the Black to Business Podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. I am your host, Monique T. Marshall. So, as the chief in charge of Black to Business, I've been fortunate enough to interact with some amazing thought leaders within the Black community. There are those who are making impact in their businesses, but there are also those who are doing the same in their careers, making sure that we're represented and have a seat at the table. And one of those people is Human Resource Executive Joan G. Wilmer. A steadfast dedication to the betterment of people truly constitutes Ms. Wilmer's personal mission statement, and ultimately, that same dedication has fueled her career as a highly decorated human resources leader. Over the past 2 decades, Joan has built an impressive rapport at companies including CBRE, Caesars Entertainment, American Red Cross, Toyota, and Citigroup. While at Caesars Entertainment, she led the largest and most successful recruitment effort, resulting in over 40,000 applicants and over 2,000 hirees, to creating Citigroup's employment of choice strategy in 13 South African countries, plus a signature leadership development program in Singapore. Joan has done it all. So in addition to serving as a human resource executive, Joan is also the founder of the Joan K. Wilmer Memorial Foundation in honor of her late mother. The organization's mission is to create opportunities and resources that make dreams of achieving higher education a reality, giving rise to developing minority leaders through mentoring and building stronger families in evolving communities. With all of her accomplishments, I thought Joan would be the perfect person to discuss the power of collaborating versus competing. So during this episode, we discussed the power in working together, how to actually build meaningful relationships, the qualities of a true leader, and being able to answer a need in your business. This episode was truly a treat because it was very genuine, and Joan had some very important tips and statements to share. So I can't wait to share it with you all. So let's get into it. So Joan, thank you so much for joining us on the Black to Business Podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be a part of your show. Thank you so much for inviting me. I love the work you're doing, and we finally got a chance to get together. So this must be heavenly sent.
Yes, I'm so excited. So for Joan, for the people who don't yet know who you are, if you could just start from the beginning, who is Joan Wilmer?
Wow, that's a loaded question. So I'm going to try to keep this succinct so you won't tap me on an arm. So my name is Joan Wilmer, born in Long Island, New York, but raised in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. So I tell everyone I'm a West Virginia girl with New York roots. I am the daughter of the late Pastor Joan K. Wilmer. So I am named after my mother and my great-great-grandmother. So Joan's running our family, and the late Anthony Underwood. I am a sister to 5 other siblings. So we have a very big family in the countryside of West Virginia. And I'm just a proud Black girl who's just been a big dreamer and not afraid to work hard. I'm a very hard worker. Mentor many, many people. I have tons of friends, but my close circle is very few. And I'm just passionate about seeing women and minorities rise in their professions and be the leaders who change the game. And so any and every way I can be a part of that, I try to make that happen. And I'd say the last but not least about Joan, I have the big heart. In my sorority, they have nicknamed me Dear Heart because I am one that just has a heart for people and very sensitive to people. So as much as I can be in the boardroom with the sharks, at the end of the day, I'm just a big ball of mush. So I am not afraid to say that. I'm very confident in that aspect of my life. So that's Joan.
Thank you so much for sharing that part of the story. I love that, the big heart. And which is why I really am excited to have you on the show, because today we want to talk about the power in collaborating rather than competing. So, Joan, you are an HR professional. And what would you say that you're most known for?
You know, I love this topic because I'm very passionate about it. And being an HR leader who's at the table with these CEOs and these 1, 2, and 3 downs who directly report to them, and even helping other organizations where the leaders are making decisions. I hear what they say about talent and rising talent and how people connect and support each other. So I do have some points of feedback. But to your question, what am I known for? I think I said it in my intro. I love people. I love being around people. I entertain a lot in my home. I actually prefer that than going out to a fancy dinner. No, I don't cook, Monique. I can't cook. I can make a spaghetti, but that is about it. I know some great caterers, but they make time in my home very, very comfortable and fun for folks. And I do a lot of catered dinners. I'm also known for being very big in my faith, as you heard. I'm the daughter of the late Pastor Joan Wilmer. I come from a family of ministers. So I'm the only one who moved away and focused in business. The rest are pastors and deacons and gospel singers and albums and all those things above. I love my family more than anything. The deepest roots that have kept me grounded all through the years of my life. And my circle of friends are just like family, and they know it, especially my circle from Norfolk State University, those mighty Spartans. And so we're very close, and it allows me to love on them even more. And I would say last but not least, I'm a connector. So in the professional world, I know a lot of people. I'm a part of a lot of circles. I like to see things happen. And it doesn't always have to be by my hands, but if I know someone who knows a resource or needs a business or needs a service or needs talent, I am quick to say, hey, tap this person, not for any gain for Joan, but just to see magic happen. And so people often come to me and say, I know you can make this happen. Can you connect me with so-and-so? And sometimes, most times, I can make it happen for them.
Definitely. And I love that. And the fact that you have a pretty impressive report at companies like CBRE, Caesar Entertainment, and you've actually been able to lead with Caesar Entertainment, one of the largest recruitment efforts. If you can talk about your involvement with that specifically and how you were able to do that.
Sure. I will tell you that's one of my top 3 professional accomplishments that I'm very proud of. As I mentioned before, I'm a connector. In order to be a connector, you got to be really good with relationships and different types of people. So everyone's not warm and fuzzy like Joan. So I tend to do well with people who are not like me, who are a little, let's call it introverted, not as warm and fuzzy, but I know it makes them feel good or what's important to them. And so knowing those different aspects of people, it allows me to have strong relationship skills. And that's allowed me to excel at work, especially with the Caesars Entertainment focus. And with Caesars, they had a widespread, nationwide strategy to set up casinos in developing urban areas. If you really think about the Vegas Strip, it's been there for years. But the generation who used to feed that industry, they're getting older, they're getting wiser, and are not able to get to Vegas as much. They might decide these days that they want to go to Florida. So it was really a concept of how do we develop a new generation of Vegas lovers, casino gaming lovers, as well as recognize who our following and fan club has been all these years that have helped to build the industry. Yeah. So this is one of several initiatives. They built casinos in Cincinnati, they built casinos in Chicago, and they decided they wanted to come to Baltimore. The good thing about Baltimore is it's this transitioning labor market. So traditionally, it's been this market where it's manufacturing, plant jobs, really more blue collar, with, I would say, about 20% of it being professional. That's the historical. And as you know, the history of Baltimore, it's gone through some transition. Yeah. At one point, the city burnt down years and years ago, and it had to be reconstructed. As a matter of fact, it had to be reconstructed twice. But as time has progressed, there's been a more professional crowd and more professional focused companies that are more in financial services, consulting, leadership, regional operational centers that Baltimore has brought to the city. And so that 20% is now becoming more 40, 60%. And Caesars saw that as an opportunity for a new fan base, that 30, 40, and 50-year-old that they're trying to capture and say, hey, have you considered fun with gaming? So when they brought the idea to Baltimore, of course, the state of Maryland had to go through the whole Question 7 bidding process to say they wanted to allow gaming in that aspect here because they already had lottery tickets and Powerball and Mega Millions. And they decided on Baltimore because of its location and how it's sandwiched into all these different cities. And so it was good on paper that they wanted this new industry to provide all these jobs and support a city that had swung from one end of the pendulum of being manufacturing blue collar. So you basically had to have a high school diploma, or in some cases they allowed you with a GED or supported you in that effort, to the extreme of being college graduate with years of experience. Caesars saw themselves as, you know what, we can come there and provide jobs to those who may not have the education, but because of our jobs and the money that flows to our industry, we can give them a pretty good living. So it sounded good on paper. And they said, Joan, we are just not doing well with it. For some reason, we can't get people out to apply for our jobs. You know, we do these radio ads. We have these job fairs downtown Baltimore. We would think they want our jobs because the market really hasn't played to that particular professional or that particular job seeker who may not have college degrees and higher education degrees and who has that professional background. So how do we tap into it? So Caesars was stuck. Everything sounded good. They got Question 7 passed. All these people were excited. All the politicians could say, we're going to Baltimore and we're bringing 2,000 plus jobs, but no one can say how they were going to get the people through the door. Well, you have a workforce you're trying to tap into who doesn't have technology. Only 1 out of 7 homes in Baltimore at the time had a computer. So where were they going to apply to the jobs if they didn't have access to the technology, let alone the internet? Also, with the gaming industry, it's very strict policies around hiring and who works in your facility because of the cash flows that come through there. So you have to pass a drug test, which is through hair follicle. That goes back way further than a urine test. You have to have a background check that says you don't have a record or haven't had any felonies, where at the time, the arrest rate in Baltimore was over 60%. So the people who were most impacted by that statistic were the very people they were trying to recruit. No one thought about all this stuff. So I can go on, but they were telling me all these things, and I'm thinking, okay, well, one, you're going to recognize that you're in a hard labor market to meet these goals. 2, you're going to have to find a way to be flexible in your recruitment and hiring process. And 3, you're going to have to think about some system that allows for opportunity and second chance, given the arrest rate in Baltimore, if you truly committed to hiring the people in Baltimore. Not to say everybody in Baltimore has been arrested, but over 60% who have been arrested in the population you're targeting, that's a very high percentage in order for you to get to 2,000 jobs. So taking all those things, it was crazy. I was listening to them thinking, you didn't think about this stuff before you signed on the dotted line, because it was a $442 million investment. I took my hat off of, okay, I've given you my professional feedback on how your numbers didn't connect to the people. And that's what I do. You tell me I need to get to X million dollars. I'm going to tell you how this affects the people, your labor makeup, your organization design, the talent you have, the talent you don't have. I can make sense of all the in-betweens of this is the beginning and this is the end. And so I started to look at that and thought, no one's going to have a high success rate of just bringing people to downtown Baltimore. It's still a developing transit city. Wouldn't it be nice if you're trying to show a commitment to an industry that's still new? Wouldn't it be nice and a powerful message from politicians, from you, Caesars, if we brought the jobs to Baltimore? And they said, well, what do you mean, Joe? And I said, It's not like you don't have money. So let's spend your money wisely.
Right.
Let's take the jobs to Baltimoreans. And I came up with the hiring strategy where we actually had the job fairs in what we called the backyards of the Baltimoreans. We partnered with the city council, Jack Young, who is amazing. I love him. He's a city council president, and all the city council members, Carl Stokes, everyone was just amazing. They opened the door for us to create these big mobile units and to go into the actual community centers where we, one, had sessions and show people how to use computers. So it was a slow process, but it was an investment that paid off. And after we showed them how to use computers and just educated them on the industry, we also partnered with job placement centers, nonprofit organizations who hosted people who knew the people in the community who could get the word out faster than a Baltimore Sun newspaper. And then we followed up those sessions with actual job fairs. Now, I didn't have a big team. I had to be creative. And I thought about this is a community that is a circle within a circle. That's how Baltimore works. It's very much a community of hands. And so I partner with a lot of community organizations, especially the Divine Nine Greek organizations. And they actually came out and helped me and my team set up for people to do interviews, to do their applications online with these mobile units. So by the time it was time to bring all those in for second interviews and to give them that great announcement of you've been hired at the we actually went to the Ravens Stadium, which was a treat for those who love the Ravens but never, ever been to a game. They had already been orientated on the industry. They had met people that were part of our organization, along with people that they trusted and lived beside them. They were able to complete the process, and I was able to get enough numbers through the door to meet our hiring targets. By the time we finished, we had over 40,000 applicants for our 2,000 jobs. And
wow.
That wasn't Joan by herself.
Right.
That was Baltimore City and beyond, who just came together and said, we need these jobs for our people. And it was just me thinking beyond a traditional HR team and leadership team to say, how do we make this happen? How do we make people comfortable who are transitioning with technology, the times, et cetera? So it was an amazing experience, and they're still using that system, and they still call me, even though I'm not with Caesars anymore, because they recognize the power of community. And that's why you see so many corporations thinking about where they reside, because without the people in that community, you can't make it happen. You just can't, because they're the ones that's going to fill your jobs.
Definitely. And one thing, I'm just soaking all of this in. And one of the things that I really loved about, you and what you do is the fact that when you were mentioning all these things, I heard impact. I heard helping and understanding the people, whether it be in your company or in your career. And I think that's important for business owners to understand the team that you have so that you can make these major changes like you were able to make. So, Joan, where do you think that comes from and how you've been able to develop those skills? Was it from childhood, or was it from like past roles that have assisted in developing those skills?
I think it's a combination of both. I am a product of, and as I mentioned, my faith is very important to me, of God's divine plan. Things I never thought I'd be a part of. I never expressed interest. I never thought I'd be in HR. I never thought I'd be in corporate America. I was going to school at Norfolk State University to be a social worker and eventually a probation officer in juvenile domestic courts. And so that was the track, because I came from a background of ministers, and we were always in the community helping those who were broken and less fortunate and giving them hope and helping them to correct things in their lives. And while I was working at Nations Bank, while I was going to school at Norfolk State University, I was working at Nations Bank part-time as a collector on credit cards. I still can't believe I did that job, but it was really good paying job for a college student. And I did well, and I kept getting these big bonus checks, and people were recognizing my work. And one day, they always sent out these announcements when we had people come in, leaders come in from headquarters in Charlotte, and again, I wasn't thinking about a career in business. And I usually worked in the evening, so I wasn't thinking I would see any of these individuals. And I got on the elevator to go upstairs to clock in for my shift. And there was this man on the elevator, and he had a tie on with semi trucks, and he was short and kind of looked country. And I'm saying that affectionately because I really do love this man dearly. And he asked me my name, and I told him my name, and he said, "What do you do?" And I told him, and he said, "Well, how do you like working here?" And I said, "I think it's great." And I started telling him about, we had a great quarter, and I was talking about the numbers, and he's looking at me, this little 5-footer Joan, talking to him about his business. And I was able to speak the numbers because that's part of my personality. I never walk in a meeting without doing my homework, without knowing who I'm meeting with, to know their backgrounds. So when I started with Nations Bank, even though it was a part-time job, it was an opportunity for me to just learn something else. And so I learned about the financials. I always looked at the quarterly reports, and I was able to talk to him about it. And by the time I finished, he looked at me, he said, "What is your name again?" And I said, "Joan Wilmer." And he said, "I like you." He said, "My name is Hugh McCall, and I'm the CEO of Nations Bank." I wanted to fall out. That was the longest elevator ride in my life. And he said, "I want you to be a part of this program." And it was a management associate program for those to get exposed to careers in the bank. And I said, "But I'm a social worker, and I like to work with people and see systems affected." He was like, "That's why you need to go to personnel." And I started in personnel, and that's how my interest blossomed. And it was from there that I would say is additional foundational skills. So one, my family, always helping, always looking at the heart of people, recognizing that, people are people first, even in business. You just can't get away from that. I think the more you recognize that, even the CEO of LinkedIn talked about it recently on Oprah's Sunday series, the more successful you can be, to recognize that people are people first. 2 was with Hugh McCall, making sure you understand where you are and who's around you. I don't care if you are a high school student who is trying to get their first job. You decide to work at McDonald's. What's the history of McDonald's? That story is phenomenal. You never know what that may take you, or knowing the people who work beside you. If you don't have LinkedIn or access to an internet, talk to people, get to know them. That background and knowledge empowers you to feel more like an owner and have a seat at the table, even if you're not a leader, a manager, a director, an executive vice president, or a CEO. I also think that it is about relationships. I don't take those lightly. I've also learned how to manage relationships, meaning the right connections, because I do believe in that, as well as making sure that you plant yourself and pour into the right places. And spiritually, there's lots of scripture around that, but I do take that to heart. And last but not least, I'm very authentic with people, sometimes to a fault, where my honesty can shock folks. But I've been told in corporate America, especially being in HR, when you have to help leaders see beyond themselves, they appreciate that. And in some cases, it's helped them to see beyond my age, because the jobs that I have had and continue to be in are well beyond my age years, but because I started so early and I just have a wisdom and God has blessed me with and an experience, and that honesty that makes leaders feel trusted, it has opened doors for me. And so leaders have said, you make it very comfortable for me to be honest. Sometimes they say things I don't want them to say, but I'd rather them say it to me than somewhere else. Right. And so I think that recipe has helped me to be a good person. Now, I didn't say all the other things around experiences, because I've had some good experiences. I've had some bad. I've made some great decisions. I've made some not so great decisions. I haven't always done the right thing, but I've owned up when I haven't, to let those be stepping stones for me elevating going forward. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And it leads into the next point. One of the things I like that you mentioned, who, was able to recognize those things in you. So I want to kind of shift a little bit and talk about, collaborating or, helping one another. Now, when it comes to, entrepreneurship and even in the workplace, what are some ways like you and your journey have been able to, capitalize on the fact that others have helped you get to where you were, and recognizing that helps more than, competing with one another.
So as you and I've had inside conversations,
right.
This is an area I'm very passionate about. I see it in corporate America. I see it when men form relationships, and those relationships spill over into decision for opportunities, where we could be in a update meeting or a talent review meeting or a decision about a product line or a market that we're trying to get into or exit out of, and it's going to require someone to lead it, because the organizations I work with are products or services are around intellectual capital. So it requires good people. And those men, once they find those relationships, they cultivate them, they show their interest, they work hard to build their name and their reputation to continue to solidify why they should be ones put on the table. And so that network seemed to work well. And I'm like, it seems pretty simple. These men get together, they meet each other, they have a favorite sports team. By the way, I love the Dallas Cowboys, and I'm just going to say that. And they have mastered I would say, the art of connection and relationship amongst themselves. And so I started to look very closely at women and how we were doing in that space. And I still think that we have some work to do, because as I watch men form these relationships, and even when there might be opportunities for roles beside them, they never took things to a point of emotional or personal connection. It was always business. It was always business and a person being an answer to a business need. And I mean that sincerely. It was always is an absolute word, business to a person who can answer a need. And so all the other stuff didn't enter. But when I started to look at women, some women did that. Most women didn't. And it was always a gap. Or when we looked at minorities trying to enter into C-suite, et cetera, there was always this gap of understanding the connection of relationship to talent to opportunity. And so the numbers of men just kept rising. They continue to rise. We're doing better, especially with some of the C-suite appointments, but C-suite's not the only area you can focus on and that you need to focus on, because people need to be trained up in order to be considered for C-suite. So what's happening with those entry-level supervisors and managers and how you're having them at the table? So the more men who are at the table, guess what? They're going to recognize and recommend the men that they've connected with, or some of the women who were smart enough to make the relationship connection with them as well, and to make sure that they showcase their talents so that they could be someone recommended for opportunities. But we women have some work to do around that. I also think we women of color have some work to do around that we can do more to increase our numbers at the table so we can make more recommendations and hiring decisions that get people in the pipeline of moving forward. And I do think some of that also has to do with the history of how we have evolved in business in corporate America, where it used to be if we had one or two, meaning women or a minority at the table, we were okay. And then after a while, you started seeing us trying to protect our one position. And now I think corporations are saying we're limiting ourselves from the ideas and talents and the customer base and markets that we want to be a part of. We need to have more diversity at the table. And so where those opportunities exist, guess what? Connect with people, build a relationship, showcase your talent so that there's more Joans around the table. And we can say, what about Monique? Oh, yes, she's a marketing communications person. She has this podcast outside of work. But in addition, these are the things that she's doing for a role that you probably didn't even know existed, but now you're being talked about and considered valued talent. And I think that's where we see the breakdown often in pipeline opportunities up into C-suite or even C-suite roles. And it bothers me because I hear the conversations, and the conversations are either no one that's a woman or minority is recommended, or one or two people are recommended and they're not ready because we really didn't engage them soon enough. Or if someone of color is recommending someone, they don't always recommend someone that looks like them or someone that they've been mentoring, because maybe they've been mentoring others. And I just think that we can do better connecting and building those relationships and investing early on. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. So we talked a little bit about, your being, kind of like the expert on, not even the expert, but it's just ingrained in you, I feel, that relationships. So my question is for those, because relationships are important in your career and in your business. So for those who are listening, what are some of the key traits that they can look for when it comes to building relationships with people? Because sometimes it may feel like you're the one who's doing all of the work. So how do you deal with that?
Well, I think it's just about thinking through genuine connections. So let me give you a personal testimony. It's not the happy ending story, but I think it's a lesson learned. When I first started out in corporate America, I had a mentor. She was amazing at Nations Bank of America, still there. She moved to Charlotte. African-American female. And she used to say, you got to make sure that you're connecting with the right people and the decision makers. And so I started going out, not only performing and working my fingers to the bone, I just started connecting with people who were in a certain leadership space, introducing myself, asking them, can I meet for coffee, talking about me. And those people appreciated that. They remembered who I was. But at the same time, I recognized that there was still a level of hollow in the relationship, empty space, that although they knew me, they didn't really take me under their wing. They just knew me. And I remember having this conversation with my mentor, and she said, first and foremost, I'm glad you listened, but you forgot some stuff in between. And she said it was about making genuine connections. And how do you make genuine connections? People want to have conversations with you that you both can participate in. So how do you participate in a conversation and allow someone else to participate? You got to learn about them. You got to ask them questions. You got to really be interested in who they are and what they do, and not just about their leadership level within an organization. And why this person, just because they're a decision maker today, doesn't mean that they're going to be a decision maker tomorrow. And sometimes you can invest time in the wrong people. So you got to really think about who speaks to you. So I started to take a step back and really think about those connections, and to find common interests. Those who were from West Virginia, those who went to an HBCU, those who were in the HR leadership track, those who were minority leaders who grew up in the organization. I started to find different things and I found this information from just talking to colleagues, asking questions, looking at profiles online where companies will have great databases that will say Joan Wilmer graduated from Norfolk State University and University of Texas and blah, blah, blah. And it would allow me to at least have conversation starters and to decide what were those one or two relationships that I was going to develop and start to cultivate. And once I got them to a certain place, I added more people to that list. And so when I told you earlier that I have a network of people, those are genuine connections. And so that has helped me, I would say minimize, I wouldn't say eliminate, because I've had some crazy folks that I've met along the way, but it has helped me to minimize even meeting some of the wrong people. And when I say wrong people, their motivation's off. They may not be interested in what I genuinely am or who I genuinely am as a person. They might be interested in what I can give them. Or who I can connect them with for the moment, and then I'm forgotten. that often turns people away or makes them a little shell shy of wanting to connect with you in the first place, which talks to or speaks to what my mentor said, which is it takes time to build genuine connections. People got to trust you and feel like this person really wants to connect with me. We speak to each other in this way. We understand each other in this way. And so that's the way I approach it. I'm not an ocean, boil the water kind of person with people. I can walk in the room and say, hey to everybody. But at the end of the day, who I have in my Rolodex and who I call and who I will allow to attach my name to whatever they're doing, I'm very specific and particular because I do think it speaks to genuine relationships and authenticity, and more importantly, your brand. And that's a whole nother conversation, but that's just how I manage it. And it has worked well for me. And I thank God for that lesson. It was painful. I can't say it wasn't. I didn't get it right away. And I do hope that people who are listening hear this. Please don't think it's always at the level. It's about who speaks to who you are and where you want to be genuinely, and who can help you grow as a person, because who you are at home is who you are at work. And so you got to connect the dots, and that person who can help you cultivate. And I thank God for those lessons, because it has helped me to mature into the leader I am today.
I love that. Who you are at home is who you are at work. I love it. And would you say
it's true?
It's true. You cannot be these separate people. They're like, I'm two different people. No, it's you. And I think
that is not true. Oh my gosh. I see some people and they come in, they just have the cutest dresses on and the nicest tie. And they're just like, hi, Joan, how are you? And I'm looking at them thinking, I see you, but I'm going to let you come out later after you have to sit in front of HR and want somebody on my team. But that's another story. So, yes.
That is real. And would you say that, all of those things are, because when you're building these relationships, of course, people want to make sure that they're mutually beneficial. So I just want to quickly say, would you even say that's how that you make sure that these relationships are mutually beneficial for both parties, and also that you're not being used in these situations?
Absolutely. Because that's part of the learning that I went through, where I was boiling the ocean and thought everyone's my friend and everyone is a connection and everyone's a network. And then I would hear about things that would happen outside of my presence, or things that people would do or say because they're climbing the ladder. They're leapfrogging, right?
Right.
Remember the old 80s game Leapfrog? You may not remember, but the leapfrog game where you're trying to get from one pad to the next, and you jump the wrong way or jump too soon or anxiously, you can fall in the water. And that's what those people were doing. And I had some experiences like that. And it at one point, in being human, because I think we need to be human, right? And especially in the show, it made me bitter. It made me bitter. This was some years ago, because I was I was disappointed. I was disappointed that, wow, I thought we were friends. We went and had lunch. We had coffee. I'm introducing you to these people. We're part of these professional circles, in some cases, social circles. And I thought we were helping each other. And in some cases, things that they would do wouldn't always be towards me, or it would be towards others, maybe other colleagues, especially other people who were in leadership of color who were helping them. And I would see them do the total opposite behind these people's backs, because they were trying to leapfrog. And eventually what happens to the leapfrog in that game? It falls in the water. That stuff kind of catches up because people realize the authenticity. So you might have a little win in the moment by, I will say, manipulating your way through. But people pick that up, and especially savvy executives who are at the top, because believe they had a process and journey of getting there, and they've already seen that person. So they're very careful of who they let in their space. They're going to be kind to you, but who they truly let in their space and recommend at the table, they're not going to attach themselves to those people because they can't be trusted. And so I think over the years, being able just to recognize who leapfroggers are and through some, I would say, some hurtful moments, some learning moments, and just seeing it from afar. I've seen that play out in talent decisions where someone or individuals weren't recommended for jobs because people were leapfrogging. They wanted to have a certain appearance. And at the end of the day, it didn't really help because then you've limited yourself and you've limited the world from evolving and becoming even more greater and diverse and deep and powerful. And people figured you out and you fell in the water because leapfroggers often don't make it to the other side, or they make it close to the other side and they fall off because it's thin air at the top and people don't have tolerance for that, especially when you are in a very busy corporate world. So I say all of that to say, to answer your question, yes, I've experienced it. I don't regret those experiences. There was a time when it first happened, it was a shell shock around genuine relationships, but it just helped me to see who those people were. You can't discount them because they're going to be in your business. They're going to be in your circles. You got to learn how to channel their energy and to learn how to have them inhabit your space or how much of your space you want them to inhabit. And it just helps you to be a wise person and to be in tune with that inner voice, or what I call my spiritual ear, that will tell me, beep, 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 go left on that one because they're crazy. Or this is someone who's genuine and you need to help. And the good thing about me in HR is, I'm not trying to climb. I've been there, done it. I was VP by the time I was 25. I enjoy what I do now, just being at the table and helping people with all their covert moves that they're trying to make. And if anything, what makes my soul happy is having mentees and helping leaders who are at the top be even more powerful and be heralded as great leaders and great influencers and those that are on that short list for CEO. And I'm like, yes, I know her, I know him, or those who are on the list for director or executive vice president and can be a part of that. And even if it meant going through some of those people who may have abused a relationship, it's okay because it made me stronger. It made me wiser. It helped them to get where they needed to be. Because at the end of the day, there's always a divine purpose and whoever's going to be there is going to be there anyway. I'm just glad to be a vessel, and it's just very rewarding to see that process evolve from a relationship.
Preach it. And I just want to say that, I've had the great opportunity to be so much influenced by Joan, to meet Joan, to celebrate her birthday with her. And I just remember how
we had a good time, didn't we?
Did. And
I was 21 again.
We had great fun. And she took that opportunity on her birthday. I would never forget. Her friends, everyone spoke so greatly about her, but she wanted everyone to go around the table and just to pour into me. And that just speaks to, your personality and how genuine you are. And you're continuing to do such great things with the Joan K. Wilmer Memorial Foundation, which is, you're developing minority leaders. So talk a little bit about, how you continue to do that within your foundation.
Well, one, I'm glad you came to the birthday. Two, I have some amazing friends that have big jobs, but they're so humble, and they're like the girls next door and the boys next door as well, who just want to see people succeed. So I'm really happy you had a chance to meet them. But Joan K. Wilmer Memorial Foundation, it's my mother was a helper. She was the pastor that rode around our little small town, who helped any and everybody. If they needed a place to stay, a lot of homeless people, I would look at her credit card bills and say, why do you have hotel charges? Wondering what my mother was doing at the hotel, the motel. And she would be putting up families who were living in their cars and living on corners and who got evicted. And she had a soup kitchen that she opened every day and often funded herself to give people hot meals. And she delivered meals. And this is what she did all day, every day. And I loved her for it. It meant that we had to share her with the world. But she understood the power of giving someone hope. And, you hear President Obama, he talked about it so much during his campaign and time in the White House. And I miss him so much. But he kept talking about hope. And my mom got that. She understood the power of God's hope. And she did that for people, even if it was an expense. My sisters and brothers and I, we laughed often and we say, well, how many times were we going to have to buy mom a flat screen? Because every time we buy one, we come home and the flat screen would be gone. And we're like, Mom, where's the flat screen? Well, so-and-so got a new house and they got kids and they need to watch cartoons. And that's just who she was. It used to anger us. Like, that's $2,000, Mom. But she was amazing. And as humble and hopeful as she was, anybody will tell you about my mother. I mean, they still cry about my mother since her passing. She knew a lot of big people. T.D. Jakes studied under my grandmother. We're a big ministry family. We teach ministers to be ministers. Al Green was my mom's spiritual advisor. Shirley Caesar was my mom's best friend. My grandmother, Victoria Coleman, you talking about a powerhouse preacher? Nobody could touch that lady. She was phenomenal. And they came through at a time where women ministers were not widely accepted. But you can't deny someone's ministry when God's just dripping all over them and just leading their voice. And so with that, I wanted to do something to capture my mom's legacy. It was a way to help grieve over her passing, but also to just keep going what she was doing, whether it be the soup kitchen or the annual community meal where anybody, regardless of what they made or had, can come down and have a healthy, hot meal together as a community, or how she would help people go to college or give people toiletries and clothes or a home to stay in, or even just helping people to grow and succeed. My mom invested in them. And so this foundation does exactly that. We partner with historical Black colleges and universities. We pick 2 every year, and we have a program called Joe Baby's Gifts. My mom's nickname is Joe Baby with her sisters and brothers, and
Aww.
where we give out packages right when students come to campus. And in the fall, we don't only do it in the fall. We're going to grow the program, but right now it's just the fall. And we give them care packages, which I didn't have when I went to Norfolk State out because my mom wasn't a college graduate. So, shout out to Dr. Bertha Tia Scoffrey, who helped me understand what it meant to be in the dorm and have sheets and towels and washcloths. I didn't have that. But with Joe Baby's Gifts, college students who come to college for the first time, maybe first generation college students, we give them toiletries, we give them sheets, we give them towels. We do things to help them fill in the gaps with their parents who have high dreams and hopes for them, but have no clue what it means to be on a college campus. We give out scholarships. Most recently, scholarships have been given in the form of computers, where I've been giving out laptops and computers to those that I know who said they needed it for their college student, but they can't afford to buy a new laptop or computer for them. And this is their only child. So we've helped with that. We also still have community dinners. My sister is now the pastor of the church, Pastor Yvette Jean Wilmer. And so she's preparing for the community dinner. And so we support that so that people can come in again and fellowship and, regardless of race or anything, just come together and be encouraged and love on each other and be a ray of hope. And that's what my mother stood for. And so that's where the foundation is. My hope is that we'll grow it even more. It's very grassroots, small scale as of now. But as I continue to evolve and get to that retirement space, that will be a 200% focus. And right now I'm just trying to grow it.
Yes, awesome. So, Joan, with all that you have done, what and how do you find balance?
It's about balancing your time and making sure that you can pour yourself 100% into those things that don't take away from you having some personal centering time for self. And if you're not 100%, there's no way you can be 100% for those organizations. And so I've just learned to pull away and the power of no. And so those that I have decided to continue my journey with is not in slight of any other organization, because I love those organizations that have invited me to be a part of them, or those organizations that still come to me and ask me to be on their board. I just know that I have to make sure that I am building and regenerating Joan and being sensible about where I can give myself 100% to those organizations, but at the same time, not personally sacrifice and not build a solid, sane life for myself. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And Joan, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience has as well. I want to end with, how can people connect with you? How can they support what you're doing, and where can they find you?
Well, one, this has been fun. So I'm glad you and I have had this formal conversation, because we've had many conversations.
Yes.
So, you're near dear to my heart. And I love what you're doing. Thank you for opening up the conversation beyond where anyone may sit or may not have had an encounter. The power of conversation and testimony is indeed that powerful. But to reach Joan, I have a website. I don't do business cards anymore. As my social media team tells me, that is old. So they keep me young. So I have a website that has my information, and that's www.joanwilmer.com. So you can find information about me there. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. So you can follow me there, where I do share some tips and information about opportunities, or just how to navigate yourself in the workplace, et cetera. But I do encourage everyone to just, continue to make the connections at work, make genuine connections at work, make those connections that speak to your true, honest self, recognize who you are at home is who you're going to be at work. And most importantly, recognize you need the balance to be able to pour in and build yourself. And if you do that, then you're already connecting with Joan, because that's the kind of legacy that I'm working to build and impart on people as they are growing and developing in their own life.